Hi, everybody. This is Jennifer Filzen, and today I have Bruce joining me for Connecting with Jennifer Filzen. He comes to me through a roundabout way. We had Caramel Lucas, who was interviewing with us and having a good old time. And then her PR agent saw that and was like, hey, could you talk to some of my people? I'm like, sure. So Bruce is the first one of this big group of artists and authors and creatives. And so, Bruce, I have to say I love your background. Your man cave looks a lot like my darling Renee's man cave with all kinds of like toys and collectibles and comic books. Tell us a little bit about who you are and what makes you special and unique.
Okay, well, I am from Seattle, Washington. I was born in 1958 to immigrant parents from Norway. They came over after World War II. They lived under Nazi occupation. My dad was in a labor camp,
Wow.
so they had quite a hard life. My eldest brother died during the war.
Oh gosh,
He
I'm sorry.
And then my sister was born before they left, and so my brother and I were both. My other brother and I were born in Seattle, so I grew up with two languages, two cultures, and started writing at a very early age, writing and drawing. I've always been an artist, a frustrated artist, but an artist nonetheless. My mother was an artist and a homemaker, I guess they used to say. But before that, she worked as a maid. My dad was a fisherman in Alaska, like the deadliest catch kind of stuff, and a carpenter. Very hardworking people. I was the first one in my family to go to college, uh, much less go all the way to get a PhD in history. But along the way, I served 6 years in the U.S. Army, worked 5 years at Boeing as a contract administrator. I don't dig the corporate world, and I got everything I could out of the Army. I learned how to fly. I worked in a prison, and I went to helicopter school. So I did a lot of different things in the Army, and now I've been teaching for about 30 years, teaching history and writing the whole time. Uh, so that's a little bit about me.
Oh my gosh, we have so much in common. I have my master's in history. Which
Mhm.
section of history are you most focused on?
My main focus is U.S. diplomatic history, which is really just sounds really nice, but it's really the history of America's wars, which keeps you
There's
very
lots
busy.
of them. Yeah, there's lots of them. There's plenty
Yes,
to choose from. Yes, yes,
yeah,
exactly.
constantly.
Oh, wow. So, my goodness, the fact that you are fluent in two languages is such an advantage. And I've heard so many wonderful things about Norway and that section of Europe. Um, I'm sorry that your parents had to flee and your dad suffered. It sounds like the entire family suffered. I have to
Yeah,
say, as much as I love history, even when you're a historian, you don't remember everything because there's so much that goes on in the world. And I did not remember that Norway was involved and taken over by Nazis. So I
yeah.
apologize for that. That was not something I
Well,
remembered.
it's not that well known.
Oh, really? Okay, so
April 9th.
I'm not a complete idiot for not knowing because I was like,
No,
I
I
don't
mean, well,
remember that.
a lot of people know the name Quisling because that's actually in the dictionary. Quisling was that's synonymous with traitor, and he was the Norwegian guy who uh, uh, became the head of government for a while, kind of a puppet for the Germans. So a Quisling is a traitor. So he was executed after the war. And actually, I had a Nazi aunt as well who chose the wrong side. I had relatives on both sides. Had a couple of collaborators. The main one was my dad's youngest sister, who was in the Gestapo, and she was handed a death sentence after the war as a collaborator, not as a collaborator, as a war criminal. But she only served 9 years, so she was able to get out. So I met her several times, and she was a strange lady, unrepentant Nazi, unrepentant.
Do you, I mean, we typically don't really get political here, but because we're
Mhm.
in the we're talking about the context of history,
Mhm.
I worry because I did study Germany quite a bit. I have a German last name,
Hmm.
but my family lines have been here since, prior to World War II. A lot of my direct lineage emigrated in the 1850s. Um, yeah. But also too, coming from the South, my family, uh, I can trace back roots to the Daughters of the American Revolution,
Hmm.
Daughters of the Confederacy, and still in the American South, you
Hmm.
want to just talk about the weather because it's really impolite to talk about politics and religion and such, because for a lot of people the Civil War is still very real. And
It's very present. It's very
yeah,
present. Yeah.
yeah, it's very present, and I still see even now after uh, President Trump's uh, time in office, that there is a lot of brothers and sisters who are family members who are on the opposite fence, just as we saw in the Civil War of
Hmm.
America, just as we saw in Nazi Germany, just as we saw in Norway.
Yeah.
Um, because you've been so involved in this, forgive me, I just so fascinated. What is your take on where we are, and how do we heal the family rifts?
Yeah. Well, it was treated as a family secret for so long. We weren't really allowed to talk about it. Like when I was stationed in Germany, I speak German too. I studied it in high school, and then I was stationed there for 3 years when I worked in a prison, army prison. And I had a German landlord. Didn't have a phone, so if somebody wanted to call me, they had to call my landlord, and he'd come down and get me, and I'd use his phone. Well, my Nazi aunt from Oslo in Norway called, and she speaks perfect German, like high German, like the fancy people German. And he comes down and he says, "Yeah, the lady says she's your aunt. I didn't know you had a German aunt." And I said, "No, she's Norwegian. It's a long story." And at that point, I wasn't free to talk about it. But then my first cousin wrote a book and exposed the whole thing. Went on a national book tour in Norway. It was on TV. And then it caused a rift in the family, even then, all those years after. Some relatives saying you should be quiet, some saying, no, you should get it out there. Let's learn, let's heal from it. And so I was on the side of my cousin who wanted to expose the story. So, but if it wasn't for my Nazi aunt, I probably would be a fisherman in northern Norway right now, because that was part of the reason my parents wanted to come to America, was to get away from the aftermath of the war, but also being the brother of this famous, at least in Norway, collaborator and war criminal. It's kind of like being the brother of Charles Manson. You just can't get away
Oof,
from it.
bad
So
press. Yeah.
yeah, so they wanted to leave. My mom didn't want to leave, but my dad did, and so yeah, so my Nazi aunt caused a lot of changes even in the family, the rest of the family.
Wow, what a amazing story. Oh my gosh, we could focus on this. I want to talk about more than just your family history, but man, what a story that,
Yeah,
boy.
since you're a historian, I know you would appreciate it. And the weird thing is that my dad's oldest brother, Uncle Torvald, was a war hero. He was awarded the equivalent of the Medal of Honor because he was a convoy commander. So I have that, and then I have the
Both
war
sides.
criminal.
Oh,
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. In fact, you can see their pictures right there.
yes. So either way, whoever would have won, you would have had a famous relative on either side. It's just a
Yeah,
flip of the coin.
and he actually used his reputation to get her out of prison. He had attorneys, really good attorneys, convince the judges, the courts, that she was very young and impressionable and had lost her German boyfriend and went psycho, which she was a little psycho. So I don't think he was exaggerating. But I always say she was crazy like a fox because she was really, really smart.
Really, really smart.
She was a
Wow.
successful business lady, could be the sweetest person you could imagine. She loved taking in stray cats. But man, you talk politics with her and it's over. You just, you can almost hear the marching drums in the background and the Zig Heils, yeah, she was,
Wow. And I
yeah.
because we're historians, I've studied. I'm still studying. I never stop studying. You know how it is
Hmm.
when you're a teacher. You
Hmm.
never stop studying because you always have to pass on information. I'm
Sure.
always fascinated as to why. Why do certain things happen? I try my best to mentally walk through someone's shoes to have an understanding as to
Hmm.
how they got there. And I have found that anger is a fear-based emotion.
Hmm.
Usually people are angry because they're afraid they're going to lose something.
Hmm.
They're afraid they're going to lose their power, status, money, family, property, freedom, right? And
Yep.
so it is very concerning when I see groups pitting against each other, trying to make each other less than.
Hmm.
And I see that with white nationalism. It's very concerning.
Hmm.
It's very alarming because where I live in Monterey, California, it's very diverse. And I love that. Speaking of Army, I live a block away from the Army Presidio Defense Language Institute. It's
Hmm.
where a lot of the military folks come to learn their various languages before they
Hmm.
ship out to, even my
Hmm.
uncle was stationed here when he was in the Air Force before he went to Germany, right? And because we have such a multicultural entity here in Monterey, I love it. There's all this wonderful food from around the world that we get
Hmm.
to eat and explore, and different religions and different styles of dress and different norms. And it's just, I love diversity.
Hmm.
But I know that not everybody is comfortable with that because they feel
Yeah.
threatened. Um, Man, oh
It
my
can go
gosh.
both ways. I always tell my students diversity is great when people cooperate with each other and learn from each other, like you mentioned all the positives. It can also be a negative when people just notice differences and start to divide. These kind of societies like our own that is heterogeneous, all these different cultures, when we're working together, nobody can beat us because we have the strength of all, 190 different nations. But when we decide to go after each other, then we disintegrate. So
That is
it's
that
classic.
is excellent. Yeah. Disintegrate is
Yeah.
a great word for what
And I
happens to our unity.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I think now is the time when people are very very emotional and I kind of have a motto that I use all the time because you get exposed to all this noise all the time. And I just say every day I say keep love in my heart and operate from a position of love. That way
Beautiful.
I can tone down the rhetoric that I might be feeling. I might have feelings, and that's fine. But think twice, before you say anything. Do you understand where the other person's coming from? And the more interesting, different people you talk to, the more you realize how we're very similar,
Yes.
even though there's surface differences. And I think a lot of people who have a lot of problems with other groups of people, if they just got to know them, they wouldn't feel that way. And
Agreed.
that's what happens in the military under fire or under any kind of life-threatening situation. All those differences melt away and you focus on the mission, and that's it. And then when the war is over, they come back and then it's all, it goes back to the, defaults, unfortunately.
It's a shame that the brotherhood and sisterhood that gets fostered in the military doesn't somehow remain, or does it in some ways?
It does in some ways, but what would be nice is if we could get that kind of brotherhood and sisterhood without being in a war, instead just find something that can unite us and who knows, it might be something that we have no control over, like the climate crisis, that kind of thing. When people fully everybody realizes we can't be fighting with each other, we got to work to survive. And actually a Norwegian was instrumental in that theory, Tor Heyerdahl, who built the Kon-Tiki, the raft that sailed across the South Pacific, 1,100 miles, to
Yes.
prove that the Peruvians settled Polynesia. That was in right after World War II. And he said that what he realized on that raft, he had different people from different nationalities, and they had to put aside all their political differences in order to just survive. They couldn't afford to be arguing because every day, there was a chance they weren't going to make it. So, and that's what
Wow.
he realized was important. And it was a metaphor for all of us that really we all live on a raft. We just don't realize it, and we need each other to survive. So I just have
So
to
true.
constantly remind myself of that when I find myself trying to fall off one way or the other and get upset with something somebody said. And it's difficult though, because we are very divided. And yeah, anyway, yeah. Without I don't really like politics. I like people. So
Me too. Me
yeah,
too. I
I like
love
people.
people. I love connecting people. I love meeting people, talking with people, getting a window into their lives and celebrating their superhero status, right? Like
Yeah,
everybody's got an amazing story.
yeah.
Yeah.
I
So
always say we're all the heroes of our own life story.
yes, yes,
Yeah,
it's true. It's true.
yeah.
So so you're a teacher and you have this
Mhm.
wonderful PhD in history. I so admire that. I almost went for my PhD. But I got to tell you, at the end of my master's, I'm like, I'm done. I'm good. I'm good. And I
I understand
also
that.
heard this joke. You might appreciate this joke. It's an old joke, but I absolutely love it. There was a husband and wife duo. She was getting her master's. He was getting his PhD. And on the day of graduation, he says, "Honey, now that we are graduating with our degrees, are you going to start calling me doctor?" And she said, "Only if you call me master."
Yeah, that's true.
So I thought that was
Yeah,
really clever.
that is. Yeah, I, you know, it's a big sacrifice. Well, either one, the master's is hard enough. PhD is, I suffered quite a bit. I mean, I don't think I knew anybody who was married that entered the doctoral program at Bowling Green State University that survived. That's marriage survived. It just becomes an obsession for
Brutal.
years,
Yeah.
and you can't do anything else. I mean, I lost 80 pounds just from stress, and
I
just
can see that. I can see
and I
that.
was
Yeah.
sick the whole time. Yeah, it's so it takes a toll in many ways. Now it's benefited me in the long run, but man, in the short run, it was a yeah. I wouldn't discourage anybody from it as long as they know that it's going to be one of the most difficult things you're going to do. And I wasn't one of these super genius people. I just worked really hard. I
Me
have to
too.
work hard for everything, and I'm
Yeah.
surrounded by these people who are extremely smart and they're very competitive, and I'm just like barely keeping my head above water.
Me
But
too.
one thing that I had is what my parents taught me is just don't give up. Just do not give up. Keep
Yeah.
keep swimming. Keep going.
Yes. So true. That is so true. And yes, you're absolutely right. I'm reading rereading for a second time Mindset by Carol Dweck about fixed mindset and natural talent and
Mhm.
having all the answers and not studying versus the people with a flexible mindset who just are always constantly growing. And I did not feel that I was naturally endowed with certain levels of genius. I had to work very hard for every A that I
Yep.
received in school. And I could see some people just cruising, and I'm like, they're out partying, and I'm working and working and studying and feeling like an idiot. But you know what's really interesting, Bruce, is that hard work has instilled a work ethic that I know that I might be I might be the tortoise in the story of the tortoise and the hare, but I know I'm going to cross that finish line.
Sure. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's it. You're going to
slow
get
and
there. You just
steady.
know you might not know how you're going to do it, but you are going to get there. So,
Yes, it's so true. I will not quit.
yeah,
Will not quit. So,
yeah.
wow. Okay. So, why did you decide on history and what drew you to teaching?
Uh, when I was in the Army, I was taking classes, and my favorite teacher was a historian. He was a U.S. Army historian in World War II. He interviewed all the big generals from Montgomery to Patton to Mark Clark, and he knew all of them, and he knew all their quirks and stuff. So he had all these interesting stories, and he was a very much a narrative historian. He would just sit down, and he was an old Southern guy from North Carolina, had a shock of white hair, looked like Colonel Sanders, and he was just, and he smoked a cigar in class. In those days, he could smoke a
Wow.
cigar. And I'm not sure if he had a white suit, but yeah, I think he did.
He
So
totally looked like the Southern gentleman. Yes,
yeah,
yes.
and
I know that image well.
he was very nice, and he would just tell stories, and it was just so fascinating. I would just sit there and just be mesmerized by all these stories. So, but he was also he taught political science classes too. So I love both political science and history, but it was really history that, the story. I loved stories. I've been writing since I was a kid, so I liked the fact that I could maybe be like him and get paid telling stories. That would be great. And yeah, so that's what I ended up doing. And yeah, so I ended up getting my bachelor's when I was in the Army. I got my master's when I was working at Boeing. Going to school at night, working all day because I had two little kids by that time. And my PhD, I sold my house and we moved to Ohio, and with little ones. And I went to
Boy,
Bowling Green
that
State University, and yeah, so
little one and marriage and moving. Dang, man. That's a
it
lot.
was yeah, so it was a great adventure, and I do love history. I still love it after 30 years of teaching history, and I like teaching at a community college too. I mean, I could have taught at a university. I did teach at a university for a while, a replacement position, and I didn't enjoy it as much as I enjoy community college. Community college, all the students were like me, first generation going to college, almost every single one of them, sons and daughters of immigrants, uh, don't have much confidence in themselves. And, these are the salt of the earth people. They have jobs, their parents aren't paying for their education. They have jobs, they have families. It's just, they're my people, I guess. And so I get along really well with them and they get along with me. And it's been a perfect blending.
Oh, I love it. I love what you do. And I love it that you found your tribe. And
Hmm.
now my next question is, who do you serve in your life? And it's kind of shared that with us. You serve your students. You really pass on your love for knowledge and storytelling. And do you do it in a narrative sense as well?
Yeah, I use personal history. I tie in everything I'll have a personal story of something that ties into it. In fact, I wrote my own textbook. I call it an anti-textbook because I didn't like the corporatized textbooks that we had to use that I didn't even like to read. How am I going to expect the students to like to read them? So I
Right.
wrote my own that jives nicely with what I do in class. And each chapter, this is where comic books come in. I have a comic book page that relates a personal story from my life that relates to that period of history. Not that I was around during the Civil War, but issues of racism and that kind of stuff. So are dealt with in these comic book pages. And I got Gary Dumm, who illustrated American Splendor, Harvey P. Carr's American Splendor. I got him to do those comic book pages to illustrate them. I wrote the story and then he illustrated. And that's how our partnership started
You
with
know what
that.
I love about what you're doing? These first generation kids that are in college, a lot of them, English was not their first language.
Right. And it wasn't
And
mine either.
and
My first
so
was
comic
Norwegian.
books help teach the language and help convey the story better because of the illustrations. So genius.
That's how I
Genius.
learned how to read. I owe everything to comic books. I was struggling to learn how to read. Even though I could speak two languages, I was struggling to learn how to read. So comic books, my mom allowed me to buy comic books. And then I was drawing and writing. And my parents got me a typewriter when I was like 9 years old. They just knew that was the right thing to do. It was an old manual typewriter, but I even typed letters from my father, like business letters that he needed to send to contractors or city hall because he couldn't write in English. So, that was all training. I was the only boy in my typing class in junior high. which I didn't mind because I wanted to learn, to be a good typist. So
And hey, when you surround yourself where all the girls are, you're the stud. Yeah.
it wasn't, yeah, that wasn't bad.
That wasn't bad. I know.
Yeah.
It's funny when we're not doing marketing and when it's not COVID, pre-COVID times, my husband and I were teaching West Coast swing dancing.
Oh,
And
really?
yeah, and so we tend to attract baby boomers and people
Hmm.
who did not grow up dancing. They were told that it was silly, like boys don't dance,
Hmm.
real men don't dance. Well, guess what? Actually, the men that sign up for yoga and dance classes and all the things where the ladies hang out,
Hmm.
guess who has a line of dance partners or has a
Yeah.
line of lady friends? Hello, like
Yeah.
whoever came up with men don't dance was an idiot.
Hmm. Yeah. These men are missing out on a whole other perspective on life, by
Totally, totally.
not
And
branching out.
same thing with the old school mentality of, oh no, you don't want to learn how to type. That's what secretaries do.
Hmm.
Well, look at now. You cannot function now
Right.
without some kind of QWERTY keyboard.
Hmm.
And those people that still refuse to hunt and peck,
Hmm.
sorry, the train pulled out of the station years ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
Good luck.
No,
Good luck with all the technology.
I, I think it's pretty amazing how parents can kind of see the direction a kid is going in and kind of cultivate that. And although my dad wanted me to be an engineer, and that didn't work out, but actually my second eldest son is an engineer, so it just skipped a generation. Yeah.
That's okay. You're the creative historian. It's all good. It's all good.
Yeah.
But who else do you serve in your life though? Tell me a little bit more about who you support and love on in your life.
Yeah. Well, I have four children, ranging in age from 40 to 21, three boys and a girl. And my youngest son still lives with us. I have my wife Ginger, and she is a stabilizing force in my life. When I served in the Army, I had a number of traumatic experiences, so I had a lot of trouble maintaining close relationships. I have PTSD, so from working in
Understand.
prisons and stuff,
Yeah, you
and
really had it. You had a lot thrown on you. You're from your
as a
birth to yeah. Whew.
as, as a young person, and so I had difficulty, and I was divorced. It's almost embarrassing to say, but three times until I finally met Ginger, somebody who, and she's little, and I'm really big, and it's kind of neat. We're kind of like Mutt and Jeff, in that way. But she is a force to be reckoned with, and she doesn't take any crap from me, and she has helped me keep my creativity going and supporting that, but also fostering stability in my life. So it's a perfect combination. So my family, I'm very, very close to my family. I tend to work a lot. I write a lot and create a lot and just spend a lot of time with my family. So, but I have other things too, like music and art, and so I try to surround myself with things that enhance my life and my friends. I don't get to spend a lot of time, especially this last year, but
Right.
and I stay connected to Norway through thanks to Facebook. I'm not a big Facebook fan, but that's how I stay connected with the Norwegian relatives, and that's fun. So
Isn't it? It's really cool how Facebook. I'm in touch with more relatives than I ever was prior
yeah,
to Facebook because I simply didn't know about them. Now because of Facebook, I know all
yeah,
these second, third cousins. It's so cool.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah,
connected with old army buddies too that have
that's
helped
so
me.
great.
Yeah, so that's been, yeah, it's been a wonderful thing, and so I can put up with all the kind of nonsense that goes on because there's so many benefits that go along with it as well.
Right, right. Well, they say with Facebook, you get what you pay for. It is a free platform, so we have to
Exactly.
go along with whatever they've got.
Yeah.
So now, so I'm curious. Gosh, you are just so. We have so much in common. I told you that my husband is a comic book
Hmm.
artist, right? It's
I
it's
checked out
fun.
his art. Very,
Did
very good.
you? Did you like it?
Yeah, yeah, I like it. Yeah, I did.
I think he's a genius in his
Hmm.
talent. But then again, I'm a little biased, just a little.
No, I looked at it and I go, I like his art. And I have a careful eye for comic book art, for illustration. So yeah, I like his style.
Well, when he's editing this video, he's going to love hearing what you have to say. So thank you, Bruce. That's a
Yeah.
huge, huge honor. So one of the things that I always like to ask, because you have such a rich story, you have so many things that you are involved in and growing in and all that. What is your why? Why do you get out of bed every day and do what you do?
Uh, because I want to make a difference, and I feel like through writing, it's like I have a mission every day. It's that sense is what I got out of the military. I decided I didn't want to be in the army anymore because I didn't want to put myself in a position where I'd have to hurt another human being. I didn't want to do that. So not that I'm not anti-military. My eldest son is a career military guy, but it just wasn't for me anymore. I had grown out of it. And what I carry with me is the discipline and the mission focus, And so every day I want to do something to make things a little bit better. And I tell my students that I say, if everybody just every day just did one little thing to make things better, help somebody, learn something that would be a benefit to somebody else or your family or friends or community, then if everybody did that, it would be a much better world. So I wake up every day with that, a list of things that I want to accomplish. I don't get through half of them, but that's okay. Then I'll start a new list the next day. And I think that's what it is. And I do a lot of meditation, and I have, because of my mother, she was not only an artist, she was psychic. She had the ability to. We could read each other's minds. We could look at cards, and we could transmit the card image to each other, and we would do
Wow.
that. And my dad would get really upset. He'd let us do it for a while, like a novelty, and when we got too many hits in a row, he'd tell us to knock it off because he wasn't afraid of anything except that. That's what he was afraid of. He wasn't afraid of the deadliest catch fishing in Alaska or even the Nazis. He made it through all that, but that idea that you could read somebody's mind, and it's not really you're reading their mind, you see imagery. So my mom taught me that, and so anyway, I can't remember where I was going with that because I
Yeah,
started to think about.
it's so cool. You were just saying that,
Yeah.
if you make the world a little bit better place,
Yeah, so that's
right?
one of my jobs is I have a little mantra that the paranormal is really normal and the supernatural is really natural. This is who we are as original people, indigenous people. And modern society kind of strips that away from people. But luckily, my mom didn't allow that to happen with me. She kept that magic alive inside of me, and I use that creatively in everything I do, whether it's comic books or writing history or writing plays or teaching. I use all of that. So
That is really cool.
I had to pretend that I didn't have that part of me because, like, when I went to school and started talking about my imaginal friends that I had, they said, no, no, you can't, that's not real. You can't talk. And I go, no, it is real. I talked to my mom about it. We talked about, no, no, that's not real. So then I quickly learned you just don't tell people that.
You
Certain
have to,
people you can tell, but not everybody.
it is interesting. There are, for various reasons, there are a lot of people who dim their light by placing a lampshade on
Hmm.
their genius, on their light, because fear or societal constraints or the desire to conform or be a chameleon, they just need to dim it down because the
Hmm.
people that need to see that light, they can't take it, you know. It kind of reminds me of years ago, I met a guy who was trying to woo me, and he was doing it the wrong way. He says, Jen, you're really intelligent, but I'm not there. Could you just dumb it down a little bit for me? And I said, how about you raising your standards and come up my level? Like, like, really? I have to keep
Yeah,
dimming my light so you stop feeling
yeah.
less than? Like, come on, just raise
He was
yourself
threatened.
up. And
He was
yeah,
threatened by that. a lot of
Yeah.
guys are threatened by very, very smart women. It's an unfortunate thing, but
Yeah.
and that's the other great thing about Ginger is that, well, she's a helicopter pilot too, just like, me, but she has a lot more experience. She's one of the few women in the world who's not only a helicopter pilot, but a certified flight instructor too. So she's a trailblazer, and, she was never in the military, but a woman in that industry, that's a male dominated thing. And she's just a little person, and like when we were flying together, we flew across country and it was wonderful. We transported a helicopter from the Robinson factory in Southern California all the way to Fort Lauderdale across the country at 1,000 feet. That's a wonderful way to see the USA.
Yeah. How long did
Every
that trip take?
A week, we took our
Oh,
time. It took a week, and
oh,
so
cool.
every time we stopped at a little airport, these little funky airports, we'd get out of the helicopter and head into the office to pay for the fuel or whatever. And the guys there would, and it was always a guy running the place. He'd always talk to me because he thought I was the pilot in command. So he'd say, "Okay," and I said, "No, you want to talk to the little lady there. She's the pilot in command." But every time they thought I was, and she said, "Yeah, I know. That's what they do all the time.
All the
They don't
time.
take me seriously."
Well, and I get it. There are a record number of women breaking into finally male dominated. This is the first time we've had a female vice president of the
Hmm.
United States, right? Um, I don't know if you can see it, but I have a snare drum
Hmm.
and a bass guitar.
Hmm.
I bought that bass guitar only 4 days ago. I decided I needed to learn bass guitar. I do know how to drum, but I'm
Hmm.
I'm new with the bass guitar.
Hmm.
And I admit I'm a 50-year-old woman and I'm walking into the store and I ask about, I need to get a neoprene pad and a drum
Hmm.
stand and some sticks for my new snare. But
Hmm.
I'm also looking at a bass and the owner, I'm sure he just is not used to it. He goes, "And this is for you?" I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, of course it's for me. Why would I walk in the store and buy it for someone else?" But I get it. I probably look like the mother of some, but no, that it's for me, buddy.
Hmm. Hmm.
So
Good for you. Yeah,
yeah,
I love music. That's
yeah.
another part of my life that with other teachers at the college, we formed a teacher band, and we played gigs and stuff, and then we take like a 3-year hiatus. We're doing other things, and then we'll come back together. We got to get the band, like the Blues Brothers. We got to get the band back together. So then we do that, and then we, for about 6 months to a year, and then we break up. Not break up, but we just go on hiatus. But it's a big part of my life, songwriting, and playing guitar. Um, I can play the drums. I'm not very good, but I can play the bass a little bit, and I play rhythm guitar. So, and I love it, and I love songwriting is really what I love. So,
Me too. Me too. It was the
yeah.
songwriting that got me to where I was with my two albums. So I don't know if
Mhm.
you know this. I own Rockstar Marketing, but it's
I
because
saw the name. Yeah,
I
I
am a
didn't
rock
know.
star. Yeah, I'm still collecting royalty checks off my one hit wonder.
Now, what is your one hit?
It is big in India. Here at home, nobody's ever heard of it. It's called "What Have I Learned," but it's a remix by Bohemia. He is Bohemia, the Punjabi gangster rapper. He's
Oh,
essentially he's essentially India's equivalent to Eminem.
oh, okay, all right.
Yeah. Yeah, we had the same producer. And so my music was out in 2007 for the first album, 2009 for the second. And I used social media to promote my music without an agent, without a record label. I was my own record label, and I qualified for 10 Grammys on the first album and 8 Grammys on the second.
That is really cool. I'm gonna have to find out more. I saw that name and I thought, okay, rock star, and I thought, okay, so now it makes sense. I understand.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
here's the funny thing. I always tell people my music's really not that good, but I'm a damn good marketer.
Well, that's where all the work is, really. I mean, yeah, talent and musicianship and songwriting ability, that's great, but that's only 10% of it. The 90% is how you market that, and how, if you want to make a living. If you're just doing it really for what we do it, my teacher
It's
friends and
fun.
I, for fun.
Yeah,
Yeah, there's no pressure. Although every once in a while you get a band member who puts the pressure on you and said, well, it's not really a good fit for what we're doing. We're a little bit too nonchalant, but it's I really enjoy it. It's another way of expressing yourself and trying to make a difference, and
it really is.
in
It really
some
is.
small way
Well,
or a large way.
also too, I've discovered, not all musicians are created equal. So I love to create. I love to write the lyrics. I love to
Mhm,
be in the recording booth and
mhm,
make stuff up.
mhm,
But as far as performing, not so much.
mhm.
I'm kind of shy of singing in front of people. So
Yeah,
I'd rather people see my music videos and my recorded music where they keep pushing the button for replay and it's perfect, right? I
yeah,
don't have to worry
yeah.
about messing things up. Then there are people that they thrive in the performance side.
Mhm,
And then when it comes to the creative side, they're like, I actually, um, so a lot of the people that we market for are in the auto repair industry. And one
mhm.
of my favorite folks is a guy that actually was a concert oboist, just top level concert oboist. And he loved the applause, but eventually his wrists and his body were giving out. He had to travel a lot and he also loved auto repair. So he gave up his music career to become an auto repair shop owner, doing very well for himself. But he says, um, I love the applause of happy customers. So he's still a performer at heart.
Mhm.
And he loves to make sure that people just, because, when you're that level of a concert oboist, you are a perfectionist. You are
Right,
practicing.
right.
So don't you kind of want those skill sets to go to your auto repair because it's going to be good, right?
Yeah.
So a champion level, applies across the board. But you're absolutely right. Music is such a cathartic, joyful, beautiful thing. And for me, I figured out that after sinking a lot of money into my music and making very crap money back, especially since I wasn't willing to gig, um, I instead moved to a different performing art, which was teaching dance, West Coast swing dancing. And
Mhm.
believe it or not, teaching dance was far more lucrative for me than it ever was for music. But again, it's just that expression of making the music come alive, however that looks, whether it's through your voice, through your guitar playing, through the dancing. It's music is such a it is what I like to call the shortcut, the cliff notes version of communicating with God in some way, because
Yeah.
music is so ethereal.
And yeah, and it gets people together and put aside their differences, even if they don't, understand the lyrics, they know how they feel. And that's where you hit people with it. And that's what really works. And I was just thinking, auto mechanics and music, they're both very mathematical. So it
Very
makes sense,
logical.
and probably dance too. There's a functional mathematics and physics to it, obviously. Otherwise, you're just falling all over the place. So,
Right? Right?
yeah,
It's so true. It's so true. So now tell me more about your book. So you've got this book that you just released. Tell me about your newest one and whatever
yeah,
projects you have coming up.
it's a graphic novel, Snark number two. So there was a Snark number one, and Snark one came out December of 2019, and this one just came out. And Snark is a alien human hybrid who comes to Earth with a mission, and his mission is to prepare Earth for colonization by his home planet, who are reptilians and kind of nasty, warlike people, right? Or entities. But he's half human, half reptilian. So he comes to Earth with his comic or his sidekick uh, called the Cosmic Staff. and there's no weapons involved. I don't like to have weapons and stuff because this comic book's for all ages, and I don't want kids see enough of that stuff. So he has this cosmic staff who's kind of a wisecracking uh, older entity. We don't know his backstory till now. Snark 2, I get into his backstory, who he is to Snark. But Snark's kind of the straight man, and the cosmic staff is kind of the Joker, the funny guy. And he makes a lot of snarky comments. And he always wants to go to Vegas because he emulates the Rat Pack. So he likes to talk like, the Rat Pack guys. So, there's a lot of humor that is at different levels, kind of like the old Rocky and Bullwinkle show, where you could look at it in different levels. Adults could laugh, kids could laugh.
Yes,
So
very
that's what I
clever,
was.
very clever innuendo. Mm-hmm.
That's what I was shooting for. And so he has a lot of adventures. He goes, meets different people, and just falls in love with us as human beings. And each story within the comic book is like anywhere from 3 to 5 pages. So they're all pretty short. And they all have a moral to them. They all have but there's an overall arc in that he has this challenge of how is he going to save humanity from his home planet, and how is he going to survive because they're getting really mad at him because he's not doing his mission. So he needs to figure out a way to do that. And along the way, there's a lot of humor. There's history. They go to historical locations. They meet different and interesting people. Like they go to South Dakota, and they go to Mount Rushmore, and they meet a Vietnamese family there. And then, so we talk about the Vietnam War. So there's always something I can bring up. So there's history, there's science fiction, there's fantasy, there's social issues that are brought up. They go to the border, but it's not pedantic. I'm not trying to preach to anybody, because it's really through the eyes of this half alien. He doesn't know everything. He doesn't know which position people. So like he's at the border, and he makes a remark. He says, I wonder if this fence is meant to keep people out or keep people in. That's what he says. So it's, he doesn't know why it's there. And then he meets a family so it's very timely. He meets a family fleeing Honduras. So, and he runs into some retired couple in Area 51. They go there to, try to find aliens. They don't know that he's an alien. He's hitchhiking. So it's kind of funny. But then it's kind of sad because they find out the old couple lost their son to an overdose of opioids. So then we get into that issue. And then Snark has the ability to, with his interdimensional vortex, to have them meet their son on the other side. So they get to talk to him. And so anyway, he's got these, not omniscient powers, but he does have certain ways to do this stuff, and along with the cosmic staff. So it's a combination of a lot of different things. And it combines everything that I love, science fiction and history and comic books, and Gary Dumm's art. We work so well together because I am a frustrated comic book artist. I'll give him some rough panels and the story, and he'll take it and make it beautiful. I mean, he's been doing sequential art since the 70s, and his style is so clean, and it's very retro. I've showed it to people, and they go, "Wow, this looks like it's from the 60s or 70s." And I said, "Well, that's when he really came into the business." So, and so I really, really enjoy working with him, and I already have another comic book planned and one after that, and it's just time allowing. But anyway, that's what Snark is, and it's for all ages. And I think the people who've read it, I have my students read it. They always ask for extra credit, so I said, okay, read my comic book. It's on Comixology for like $1.99.
That's a great way to
Yeah,
promote your art. That's hilarious.
and it's historical because they Snark and the Cosmic Staff meet. They go to Devil's Tower, and they meet some Native Americans, and they're having some trouble with tourists who are trying to climb the very sacred Mato Tapila, as they call it, and violating the rules, and that brings great sadness to Snark. He said, "Oh, they're not respecting what you guys call sacred," and so the kids, my students, read these things, and they start thinking about it. So they have some really interesting comments that they have, and especially because the story about the border, it hits a lot of them very closely because they like 65% of my students are Hispanic and they're first generation American, so
Yeah.
I think they enjoy it. So they're learning and they're enjoying themselves looking at the great pictures and the funny stories, and so it's all coming together. So I love it. In fact, of all the things I've done, I mean, I've had 5 plays produced. I've written 10 books, academic books and textbook. The thing that I've been most proud of was my comic book.
Nice.
It's weird to say, but I got the most enjoyment out of making that comic book with Gary Dumb, and Gary Dumb's wife, who's also an artist. She did all the text and the lettering and the color. She has a wonderful palette, it was very much a team effort. But that's the thing I think I'm most proud of, because that's where it goes back to where I started to learn how to read. And if it wasn't for comic books, I wouldn't be doing what I do today.
That is so cool,
It all
Bruce.
comes full circle. So,
Isn't that cool? So, what advice do you have for anyone listening and hearing your story?
uh, the only person that can really stop you from fulfilling your dream is yourself. People can put up barriers, they can make it difficult for you, they can be a pest, they can be a hindrance, but you just have to work through it and keep going. It took me 37 years to produce Snark #1. It started as a comic strip in engineering school in 1982 in Butte, Montana. I thought I was going to be an engineer because that's what my dad wanted. Figured out that's what he wanted. That's not what I wanted. So those are things you figure out when you're young. And I did a comic strip called Snark, and I did 5 comic strips. I illustrated and wrote it. It was very popular in the school newspaper. And then I flunked out of engineering school. So then you think, oh, there's the end of that. But 37 years later, it comes back, and now it's a comic book, and now it's the second one. The second one's actually a graphic novel. It's much longer, so it's not a traditional floppy, traditional comic book. It's
Right, not a
yeah,
newsprint. Yeah.
right.
So, if people wanted to find your work, where would they find you?
Just my catch-all website, bruceolavsolheim.com. So just my first name, Bruce, middle name, Olav, Olav, last name, Solheim, bruceolavsolheim.com. And they can see all my books, including the academic books, all my paranormal books, because I wrote a trilogy of paranormal books, and the 2 comic books, all the plays I've written. There's some of my music's on there too. A little bit of everything.
I love it. So, bruceolavsolheim.com.
.com, yeah.
See all the books, paranormal, academic, comics, plays, music. My goodness, you are such a font of creativity. That's
I have
fantastic.
I have a lot of interests. I'm very curious about things, so yeah.
Well, yes, I'm with you. I cannot rest unless I'm learning something new. And so, yeah, I'm with you. That is so
Mhm.
cool. Well, thank you, Bruce. Everybody who's watching, thank you so very much for connecting with me today. And Bruce, isn't he fascinating? And I just love that Caramel Lucas opened up the door to me meeting you and a whole bunch of people. It's Creative Edge, right? That is your
Mhm.
PR firm,
Yeah,
and
Mickey
it's
Mickey
Mickey. That's
Mickelson.
right. Yeah, she sounds terrific. Yeah, so I look forward to meeting the entire
Mhm.
lineup of Creative Edge clients. But no, truly, truly, and I do hope you'll keep me abreast of any future work that you have coming out.
Well, yeah, I will. Thank you very much, Jennifer. And you're fascinating too, all the things you've done and accomplished. I'm going to check out your music because I really want to hear it. And,
Don't
and,
laugh
and
too hard. It's cheesy. I thought I was really good, and then I realized that later on I'm like, ooh, cringe. But you know what? I did it. It's kind of like getting your degree. I finished it. I got my piece of paper. Next.
no, I no, I know music is not easy. And and producing it and recording it. There's most of I think the whole thing is fun, but it is a lot of work. So
It is true. And to add to that, I started West Coast swing dancing about the same time I was doing my music, so 2006. But, ironically, even though I've made more money off of dancing than I ever did with music, dancing was always that secondary thing. I've never
mm,
been lauded as an exceptional dancer. I've never been a champion level. Like it's just something that I've enjoyed. But what's kind of interesting is that where my I have a love-hate relationship with music, and I go in and out of it
hmm
every 10 years or so. I never stopped dancing. And
hmm
there was no pressure to be the best with that. And it's just so ironic because I have reached a level to where, yeah, my husband and I teach West Coast swing across the country, even though
that's
we're
really
not champions. And I think part of the reason why I'm such a good teacher is because I have done it so poorly. Like it was never a natural gift. It was like, I have to work really hard at this. And if I look at my dancing of old videos just 5 years ago, I'm like, oh gosh, my footwork was not that good. And so that's how I am with my music. I look back and I'm like, oh gosh, what was I thinking? But you don't know until you know, right? You keep evolving as an artist, as a writer, right?
hmm
Same thing with the content that I create. I'll write 90 pages for somebody's website, and 6 months later I could look at it going, oh, I need to redo it. But that's just the nature of
We're
evolution. Yeah.
constantly growing. Yeah, it reminded me what you said. In baseball, the best managers in baseball are really the players who never made it to the majors. They're the people that struggled and worked for 10 years in the minors, had to give up, got injured, and never were, or even if they were in the majors, they were there just for a cup of coffee. But they're the best managers. It's just that once you're like a superstar, sometimes that's hard to. How do you deal with the people who are not to teach them?
Right.
They yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. Well, okay, I'll just think of myself as a superstar manager now.
There you go. Yeah, most
I
successful
love it.
manager. Yeah,
Right?
true.
Oh,
True in
you are
baseball.
so much fun. We're gonna have to connect again another time. But
That would be
truly,
great. Thank you.
thank you so much. Thank you everybody for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed Bruce as much as I did. And truly, check him out. Go to bruceolavsolheim.com
That's
and
it.
go check out his art. All right, guys, thank you so very much. Bruce, you
Thank
have
you.
a beautiful day. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.